passing notes in the class.
Good evening and welcome to the January 22nd, 2019 meeting of the Guilderland Board of Education. Would you all please silence your cell phones and rise to the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The first item on our agenda is the showcase of student work, and this evening we have some 10th grade English students with us. Marie?
All right, thank you. Well, I'm so pleased tonight to welcome two of our co-teachers from Guilderland High School who are here with a team of students. We have Mr. Chris Missoura and Ms. Jamie DiStefano, who have been working together for the last couple years and have been doing some amazing work. So I'm going to turn it over to you to set the stage and let us get started.
So, good evening. I expected this to be amplified, but this is just for recording purposes. Is that correct? My name is Chris Missoura. I'm in my 11th year as an English teacher here at GHS. And on behalf of Jamie DiStefano and our four, they're currently 11th grade students, but they were in our 10th grade class. We just wanted to thank you all for taking a slice of the meeting to devote to the student showcase. And we love watching it when it happens here, and so we just want to thank you for continuing to have students at the Board of Ed meetings. We think it's really important.
I'm Jamie DiStefano. This is my 4th year here at Guilderland High School, 3rd year teaching with Chris. I just want to say a few words. So our priority last school year was to teach students how to have civil conversations. In order to teach this, we knew we had to know our students and they needed to know one another. Relationships matter. Throughout the school year, it was important for the students to see that Chris and I have different points of view, but can still have a respectful conversation and a respectful relationship. That is what co-teaching is, respect. Professional respect, listening to each other's strengths, and committing to believing that every student can succeed. Our co-teaching relationship allows for us to share our expertise, differentiate for all learners, and increase student engagement and achievement. We teach all students, we care for all students, and we respect all students. But most importantly, they teach us.
So I might just say a couple of words about what the project was for the past year and a half, and then we'll invite the students up. We began working together in our 10th grade co-taught English class September of 2017. Yeah. And so it's been a year and a half now. And as Jamie said, we were really interested in supporting students in entering civic discourse and having civil conversations. And so really our question for the year was, how do we support students in entering conversation in the classroom and also in our community? By May of last year, students were self-moderating conversations about race, gender, and power, and considering diverse solutions to pervasive global problems, which they'll talk about in a moment. Jamie and I believe student voice matters, and by November of 2018, just a couple of months ago, these students had presented for over 50 teachers, professors, and writers at the New York State English Council Annual Convention. I think some of you saw a video documenting that, partially, and they're here to tell you a bit about their experience.
Hello, my name is Cole Cornfield, and my part of the presentation we gave at the conference focused on having critical conversations in the English classroom. And while it was certainly a success, I would say that on a broader level, the last years have, if nothing else, shown us that we need to be able to have meaningful and respectful conversations both in and outside of the classroom. I would also say that perhaps it's time we start to consider solutions that are outside of the mainstream to some of our more pressing concerns. I would think that many of us have grown tired of the circular conversation the mainstream left and right have been having in this country as of late. But it also seems to me that in the past few years, a sort of box of opinions and ideas that you're allowed to have is developed. And as people who all have careers to protect, I'm sure you know that getting taught talking about any number of ideas or ideas or solutions that are outside of this mainstream can have serious repercussions for you and your associates. As someone who holds opinions that are outside of the mainstream, I know this all too well. Personally, I feel as if the coming years and decades will challenge our basic assumptions about gender, race, and power, among many other things. During the presentation, I focused on race and the effect it will have on the future of American identity. However, currently, it's going to be hard to create solutions to these problems before they come to a boiling point due to the taboo surrounding addressing them in any meaningful manner. As someone who now often gets into these kinds of emotional conversations, they can very quickly cause emotions to run high and cause participants to throw reason to the wind. But if educators were to provide an outlet for students to discuss controversial topics and ideas without the stigma those ideas may come with, and provide some sort of moderation where every voice is heard, I believe we can not only make students better citizens, but also have a real shot at saving this country. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Hannah Mizuka. I'm a junior here at JHS. Today I wanted to share with you guys what it was like for us to speak at the English Council's conference. Cole, Julius, Haishira, and I each prepared small presentations to talk about what we enjoyed and what we did not enjoy about civil conversations in the classroom. More specifically, we focus on issues such as racial profiling, the power of student voices, and I more specifically dove into researching the issue of gender equality. During the presentation, we gave examples of our experiences with civil conversations and ways to introduce these conversations into the classroom. Overall, many of the English teachers enjoyed hearing our point of view rather than a teacher's. They particularly enjoyed hearing what works and what doesn't. Dr. Javon Hunter, who's the chair of urban education at Buffalo State University, was so impressed that he invited us to speak at the Youth Voices Conference in Buffalo this May. This conference would give us the opportunity to talk with more students and English teachers from across the state. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Julius. I'm also a junior at Gildan High School. Presenting in front of a public, mature audience changed my life forever. I am now a lot more comfortable in day-to-day conversations and in front of a classroom. It has led me to start a civil conversation club with my friends. Civil Conversation Club is a club where you can come and safely express your view on the subject. We have touched on issues like immigration, gun control, and hate speech, and also drinking age. Our club changed the student community in Guilderland. Students now truly understand the power of their voice, and they understand the power that their voice can have and the impact it can have on people. They have also learned the most valuable skill in life. They've learned to listen. I believe that listening is the most important skill in the conversation. If you respect someone's voice, they'll respect yours. 10th grade English taught me skills that I'm going to use throughout my whole life.
My name is Aishira. I'm also a junior at Gilder High School. I didn't write anything, sorry. Well, for most of you guys, you saw my poetry that I wrote, and I wrote that because it was an experience that I experienced as a child, and I never told anybody about that. And when Mr. Missouri found out that I like poetry, that's something that me and him had in common. And he taught me to be more involved in poetry and express myself and be more happy about poetry. And so it was hard for me to read that, because when you don't talk about something that happens to you, you break down. And racism was a very hard issue for me when I first moved here. But now that I opened up about it, I'm able to talk about it more. I'm able to make other people around me aware of the situation and that it does happen every day. And that there's some ways to handle the situation, and sometimes you don't always have to use violence. And sometimes it's okay to walk away from it, but also you should be more able to speak up about it. If you feel like you can't speak up about it, you should go to somebody, an adult or something like that. I do go to Julius's club. I go to his club all the time. We do talk about some tough topics there, and I find it really is helpful, and people are more aware of issues today that's going on in this world, instead of just talking about things that are going on in the school also. But we do talk about a lot of things that are helpful, and they're more aware, and people do have strong opinions, but at the end we all shake hands and we're just one big school. Yeah.
Thank you.
Anyone with questions?
Thank you, they were great.
Gloria?
Well, I was wondering, because that was a powerful video, I have to say, that was a really powerful video. When you leave the confines of your class, where everybody's kind of committed to the way you're pursuing these civil conversations, how do you, when you go outside that bubble and deal with people outside that, do you find yourself wanting to change, teach other people how to converse, or do how do you use your skills when you're meeting outside that group, that people that may not be comfortable talking about some of these topics and get kind of...
I guess I'll take a shot at answering first. I think that Civil Conversations has actually really highlighted that, but just in a general way, I notice a lot of people, like I mentioned, like they get very emotional if they have a personal connection to the topic, and you can tell, like, you can see what they're trying to say, but they're saying it in a not very optical way. They're being very rude or very aggressive with how they're saying it. So I noticed the most common thing I'm doing is just like telling people to calm down and be more reasonable with what they're saying, as when you sort of present something in a less angry way, people are a lot more receptive to it. Whereas even if you're presenting something that's factually true, if you present it in a angry or a bad way, you could say, like, people are a lot less likely to really want to listen to you. So so yeah, that's what I've noticed. Just trying to calm people down and help them present their ideas in a more reasonable way.
Well, what I usually do is if someone's talking back to me or not listening to what I'm saying, I just tell them, okay, listen. If you're not going to listen to what I have to say, I'm not going to listen to what you have to say, and I just end the conversation.
Listening skills are really important. I didn't have those. It was really hard for me to understand that people do have a strong opinion on strong topics, and so I found that if I listened to what they had to say and let them realize that I heard them and respond to how I felt about the situation, that does help. So yeah, just listening, to be honest. Yeah.
Last year we were taught, when we have an opinion, to say "in my opinion" instead of "oh, this is correct." And I've noticed that now I start to tell people, say it's your opinion, because it might, you might think it's true, it might not necessarily be true. And when you say "in my opinion," it makes it a less hostile environment.
Good points. Do you use any of the skills outside that class, in other classes? Or you find yourself using those same skills?
Yeah, both in outside of school and in other classes.
I use it at home.
At home? That's great.
I have to do it with my grandparents sometimes.
I just have one comment and one question. First, I think this is awesome. I wish they offered this in workplaces and other places, because you're right. I just think it's so necessary, so I think it's awesome that you're doing this. Sounds like you're committed to it as well, taking outside the classroom. Do you think that you've become actually tolerant of other views, or have come to an agreement, with someone maybe you've had a strong disagreement with, or just more tolerant in general overall?
On the question of tolerance, I would say that increasingly I'm finding that the people I'm talking with, we just fundamentally disagree. We have philosophical differences, so there will be no room for agreement. One opinion will simply enforce its will upon another at some point. But I feel to really move forward, enough people are going to have to come to that realization that there are certain things we just can't really compromise on. And then what happens from there is, that can get quite ugly. But we'll have to get there first before we decide what we're actually going to do. So that's what my answer would be.
I found that after having these conversations and talking about these issues, I've become more open-minded and open to new ideas and new views.
it's hard work, so I congratulate you for doing this and coming to share it with us. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you for coming in. That was great. Okay. The next item on our agenda this evening is public comment number 1. I believe we have one individual signed up tonight, and that is Tanya Thompson.
Good evening. I'm sorry, I'm a little nervous, so I wrote everything down. For those of you who do not know, Banana Splits is a school-based program for students who have experienced parental divorce or death, and it was established in 1978. The Banana Splits program has been removed from Pine Bush Elementary. I am here today on behalf of my 8-year-old son, asking for your help to reinstate this program. I know that Banana Splits is still offered at Linwood Elementary, but I'm not sure about the other elementary schools. I've been trying to find out. I do know that other neighboring school districts are still offering this program. I was given 3 different reasons by 3 different faculty members of why it's no longer offered, and I can speak to each of those reasons. The first reason was there was not enough interest. I did ask a handful of parents this week if their children would be interested, and out of 5 I asked, 3 parents said that their children need Banana Splits. So at least 4 children in 2nd grade alone would benefit greatly from this program. The second reason I was given was the counseling team at Pine Bush decided it is not a program that belongs in school because kids talk about stuff and they get upset and they go back to class. Banana Splits is a school-based program, and it has been successful for over 40 years. Our children need to be given the opportunity to talk about their issues and learn coping skills. My son loved attending Banana Splits in kindergarten, and he felt connected to the other kids and enjoyed talking about his changing family. Also, my 10-year-old stepdaughter loves attending it at her school. And the third reason I was given was it has been decided that a specific Banana Splits group would not be regularly offered because in general over 50% of families have a non-traditional family makeup, and this has become the new norm. We found it would be more beneficial to target specific student needs. My son was offered a group for social skills. This group does not target his specific needs, and he has no issues with social skills. I was also referred to outside counseling. Although this is a fair suggestion, these children benefit most from the support of their peers, hearing each other talk and knowing that they are not alone. Just because non-traditional families are now considered the new norm, it doesn't mean that children no longer need the support. It has been proven that children of divorced parents do struggle with coping and facing challenges on their own. Again, I am here today on behalf of my son. He has been struggling for a few months now, and he's been begging me for help, specifically wanting to talk to others who can relate to what he's going through. I told him that I promised him I would fight for him to bring this group back to school. So today I'm asking if you can help me to reinstate this program at Pine Bush. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Thank you for coming in. Okay. Marie, is this something that we can look into at Pine Bush and follow up on?
Absolutely.
Okay. Thank you. We have a second public comment, which is Nancy Field.
Hi, I've never done anything like this, so bear with me. I've made lots of phone calls trying to get some sort of established rigor, but I couldn't get any answers, so I'm just going to ad hoc. Moved here from Colorado, still on a little bit of culture shock, and trying to figure out the school system. We are a part of the Guilderland school system. My daughter is enrolled in a private school right now. Mainly because when we moved out here, we couldn't get a hold of anyone over at Farnsworth to actually take a tour and see it, and she comes from a school of public school, 18 kids in a class. So when we heard there was like 400 and then some, we thought this would just be overwhelming. She's always been in a small school, and I've been looking around for a place for her. And I heard that there is a tech school called Tech Valley. Went and visited, applied through Gilderland, had to come here, meet with a guidance counselor, and went through all that. But what I'm not understanding is how many spots have Gilderland sponsored? Is there more? How do I get my daughter, like, a fair shot? Because a high school this size, she would not do well. She just wouldn't. It's not an option. She would break down. You can't take a kid that's used to 13 kids in her class and throw into this entire environment and say thrive. It's not. I can't homeschool her because I work. And I tried calling the superintendent's office a few times trying to get information. Haven't gotten any phone calls back. I work. I can't homeschool her. I'm sometimes on the road. I pull 17-hour days. So there's no option. It's not a good life for her. She wants a social aspect. Smart kid. Wants to go to West Point. Wants to study computer science. I don't know how to get her there. And I'm struggling here because they can't get any answers. And right now, so I talked to the president of Tech Valley, and he's like, here are your talking points. You know, right now, she's not registered in the school, and if they sponsor her, then the state fund that's allocated per child, which I think is $12,000 or $13,000, it's no different in Colorado. Then the school will get actually allocated those funds plus a $6,500 kicker from BOCES, none of which that they're seeing now because she's not attending. She's not a student of yours. And I don't know if filing that application through Gilderland actually makes her a student. I don't know the mechanics of that, but according to the financial office over at Tech Valley, Gilderland's seeing no dollars from her and will see a surplus of $20,000 a year, which I think would be a good reason to sponsor her if she can get to that school. So I understand it's a lottery, and I can't get any idea of how many people are applying, how many spots there are. So that's why I'm here, and I don't know what else to do. Because when I look around, like, I don't have many options. So if you can tell me that there's others, I would be open to that. But right now, I see a school that she loved, did a great time at. It's exactly in the field she wants to study. She did well on her visit day. And I can actually get there. Like, I can actually get there as opposed to driving an hour away to another option that actually isn't one, because I don't know who can afford the tuition over in Troy, but I can't. So, help. I don't know what to do. Anything?
So generally, we don't respond publicly to this, but we can certainly, if we can take your contact information, have somebody at the middle
I'll call
school
you in
that
the
will.
morning.
Yep. So if you want to write down your contact information on here, we'll make sure that somebody calls you tomorrow too.
Tomorrow. Okay, because I've left messages, and when I've left messages like, oh, someone will call you back, we're just really busy, I'm like, I get that, because, you know, I can't walk up and down the stairs without also trying to clean it. You know, I brought work, because I'm not done yet, because I was like, I just can't sit for 2 hours without doing that. So when I walk out of here, I'm hoping that, like, when you say that someone will call me back, I'll actually get that, because I don't have the bandwidth to come back next month and do this again, and I still don't have any answers. And I don't know what kind of accommodations that you make, but if she had autism, I'd know, yeah, she could get an aid, or if she had some sort of developmental need, the school district would supply that. I've got a kid that there's no way, with all the kinetic energy and all that sound and all of that, I mean, we drove to get to the other side of this school. It's a big place. So the max that she's ever had is 18 kids, and to come into this type of environment, I can't do that to a kid that is unbelievably smart and talented and kind and very introverted. So,
Okay.
when you
So
tell me someone's going to call me back,
If you want to put your phone number on here and a time that's appropriate to call, Marie will call you back
call you
tomorrow.
back.
If you
Okay,
want
and I'll
to
get
write it down on here.
answers. I mean, you you got to understand, yes.
Pass this down over there. So the next item on our agenda is our program report, which is the state of the district. And for that, Marie and Damien.
Good evening, everyone. Thanks for being here tonight. Our presentation tonight, I think, should best be categorized as the start of a conversation. What we'd like to do really is present to you a wide variety of data about the Guilderland Central School District community, focusing in on three big areas. We want to talk about our community itself. We want to talk about student performance. And then we want to talk about things that are beyond the classroom. So we're going to be sharing a wide variety of data with you. Before I go any further, I need to thank our CIO, our Chief Information Officer, Mike Bastian, who unfortunately is, I think he's got the flu or something horrible, or he would be here tonight. He did a tremendous amount of work to pull this data together. And I also want to thank Damien, who did a lot of work to organize it and put it into charts and graphs that are easy to interpret, or sort of easy to interpret, and we'll be able to answer some questions. So let me just begin, and then I want to say that we're going to complete this presentation tonight with an activity to engage all of you in thinking about kind of where we are as a district and where we want to be as a district. So just as a foreshadowing, you will require your devices in order to participate in that. So just a little bit about us. So everyone in this room, I think, is very familiar with this kind of basic information about Guilderland, but we cover 60 square miles. That's something to think about on a morning like today, or a bad morning in winter when our buses have to cover a long territory. And we're in actually 4 different communities, most of the town of Guilderland, but also part of Knox, New Scotland, and Bethlehem. And as you know, we have 5 elementary buildings that are neighborhood elementary schools. One, as our speaker just pointed out, a large middle school and a large high school. I think one of the things I'd like to point out is that Guilderland has a reputation of having a very challenging and forward-looking academic program. And we work hard on that. We also have, you can see I'm not easily distracted.
Bill Gates must be sitting here thinking,
laughing
let me update some software right now, so I'm hoping that I can cancel this here.
I'm going to ignore him and just say, and I think you saw a great microcosm of that forward-thinking teaching and learning that happens in Guilderland with our showcase of student work tonight. And along with that, it's because we have some really committed, excellent teachers who genuinely care about the future of our students and engage them in learning opportunities that do, in fact, make a difference.
I don't know what's going to happen.
We'll just close.
I can't.
It won't close.
Ticking time. I think it's going to restart.
You have 13 minutes.
You got 13 minutes to make the presentation.
Oh, can I get rid of this X? Can I do this?
Drag it down. Drag it down.
Stay
Get
down.
rid of it, yeah.
You did that.
You have to use your imagination about what is at the very bottom of our...
Log in here. I'm going to.
Oh, I can't.
You got to log in here.
Okay. Here we go.
Shut down. Yeah, we could. And Marie, do you want us to move on to some other items while?
This should take
This will take 2 seconds.
2 seconds.
Okay.
Just go to my drive.
One, two.
All right, so then we do this. And
Try again.
As you were.
Oops, I have to use this. Okay, so we begin, and our screen is not going to work, but that's all right. We begin every conversation about who we are with our mission and vision. And I have come to the place, really, where I like to think about our mission and vision really in 4 words, where we talk about all kids, every single last one of them, being ready for whatever the future might bring. And that's kind of scary as a school district because we don't necessarily know what the future will bring for our students. So how do we prepare them and give them the skills that will make them ready for it, ready to embrace it, and feeling comfortable about that? The other point I want to just highlight a little bit tonight in our mission and vision really has to do in the vision statement. When we talk about a safe and welcoming environment, it's become more and more obvious that our kids can't learn, can't engage in rigorous academics if they don't feel like they can come to school and be safe, secure, and surrounded by people who empower them to speak. So you'll see a lot of work that we do as a school district is around creating that safe, welcoming environment. So who is and what does our school community look like? By the first question, so how many of us are there? And so you have our overall student enrollment for the past several years. The first bar, which is at 4267, goes all the way back to 88, 89, when some of us were very young teachers at that time. And then we jumped, there's a 10-year jump there to 99, 2000, and you can see we had a significant amount of growth in that period of time in Guilderland. And we've been on a steady decline since. But next year, we're projected to be 84 students higher than we are this year. So I'm hopeful, and I think the data should play out, that we may have hit the low point of our enrollment here in Guilderland, which is a great thing. This is also a graph that tells you a lot of the story of Guilderland. In the early years, this is the percentage of students who qualify for free and reduced lunch. 2008, 2009 is the first number we've provided data for you. This was the year of the Great Recession, and overall in Guilderland, our free and reduced lunch was under 6%. Flash ahead to 2018-19, and it's almost 19% district-wide. Now there's 2 reasons for that. One of them is the Great Recession. We have many families in Guilderland who did not recover from that terrible point of time. But the other thing you need to know is that it is now, families have easier accessibility to apply for free and reduced lunch. So some of these numbers are finally capturing those families who were struggling economically even before we had a recession. But I think this is a pretty dramatic picture of the kinds of things we need to think about as we're serving our students. This is our data of students with disabilities. We are fairly steady, although we're on a little bit of a decline. You need to know that the state average is about 11% of a population, of a population with students with disabilities. And this is a chart of the numbers of students in each of the categories of identification that we have here in Guilderland. There's a total of 13 categories. We hit 10 of them, and the most frequently used, the one right in the middle with 270 students, is learning disabled. And then the next highest is the 179, it's OHI. That's other health impaired, which is, the way I describe it is if you don't fit in the other 12, you end up in other health impaired. So it's kind of a mix of disabilities. But we also have growing numbers of students with autism, and the 67 down in the end is speech and language impairment. Here's another growing scale, and these are our students who are learning English as a new language. You can see the first 3-year intervals on this graph going back to 1988 and then all the way up to 2008, 2009, and even 10, 11. We are under 2% of students who are learning English as a new language. And then it's been, if not a steady incline, it's certainly been trending in that way. And this, I think, is really telling. Along the bottom, these are all of the languages spoken by our students here in Guilderland. There are 41 of them there. And you can see the numbers of students for whom this is their first language. So we have to recognize the talents of our ENL teachers who every single day find ways to connect with students from all over the world speaking all kinds of languages in order to access our curriculum. This too is an interesting snapshot of our growing diversity here in Guilderland. The blue is the percentage of white students in Guilderland, and the various colors above are the numbers of students who are from diverse backgrounds. If you can look at the last 10 years from 2008, 2009, which is right here, to the end, we have had a 10% increase in the amount of diversity in our schools, which is awesome. We, I think, embrace diversity. We recognize that it brings this rich cultural experience to the classroom, to learning opportunities, but it means that we look different, and we have to be sensitive and tuned into and ready to embrace that. You know, as you think about some of the things we do so well here, probably the most obvious is our cultural fair each March, which is coming up right now, where we make it a district-wide celebration of the diversity in our community. Something we need to definitely not only embrace, but to be sensitive to and thoughtful about as we think about how we work with our students and our families. So these next couple slides talk about the resources that we spend in order to support our students. And you can't see the bottom, but on the far left, this chart, this is the amount in dollars spent in all New York State schools. The blue are the dollars spent for general education students. The red is the dollar amount spent for students with disabilities. The tall section in the middle are similar districts to Guilderland, categorized using the state criteria as low need. And the last box is Guilderland. So you can see that in all categories across all comparisons, we are spending less per child than others. Now, there's a couple reasons for that. Some of it, I'm sure, is connected to the fact that we are very careful with how we spend our resources here in Guilderland. But Damien and I were talking about this a little bit earlier. I think we have a nice advantage in Guilderland. School districts right around 5,000 students are at a very sweet spot for being efficient. We have enough students in order to offer lots of programming in a way that is cost effective. If you're a teeny tiny school and you think about that, in order to offer anything at all, your costs per student are going to be much, much higher. Also, if you are a school with huge geography, you're going to end up having high costs because you're spending lots of money on transportation. The other thing is there are regional variations across the state. So lumped into these averages are many of the schools downstate that spend just much more money because the costs there are much higher than they are here. So interesting data point. Here's another way to look at that same data. Guilderland, similar low-need schools, and then all New York State schools. And I'm going to hand it over to Damien to talk about our performance.
Okay, well, hopefully not another update on this computer. So let me start with the end in mind. We're going to start with graduation rates. And Guilderland historically has had very strong graduation rates over the years. And as Marie noted, with the demographics and the shifts that we've seen in recent years, it's encouraging to see that our graduation rates are remaining steady. We're not seeing any shifts in those. So even though our student population is becoming more diverse, our students are still graduating at high numbers. So we hover somewhere between 94 and 96% for graduation rates, which is very good. with Regents exams, again, I'm going to stick with high school for a few moments here, with Regents exam proficiency, and I hate that this is cut off, but you can kind of get the gist of it. For the first four Regents exams, you have English, Algebra 1, Geometry, and Algebra 2, and we've done a quick comparison to Suburban Council as well as New York State, and you can see that Guilderland is right there with the Suburban Council. Some nuances in there. There are some places where we can look at it and say, yes, there's definitely some room for improvement there. There are other places that you'll see in a moment where we can say we're really doing an exceptional job and we can really be touted for that. So here's what we're seeing for English, Algebra 1, Geometry, and Algebra 2. And this is just last year's data. This is the 2017-18 Regents proficiency scores. Regents exams will be changing in format, somewhere around 21-22s. Last we've heard from the State Education Department, so we're also preparing for some of those changes in format. The other Regents exams, Earth Science, Living Environment, U.S. History, Global History, and Physics. Again, compared to Suburban Council as well as New York State, you can see that we're right there with both of those and certainly exceeding across the state. Again, some places that we can definitely see as strengths and some other places where we'd like to make some improvements as well. So doing well, but again, we try to learn from these results. This is only one measure, important to keep in mind. So as we look at student success in general, many other measures are available to us. Some of them are included in accountability standards. Some of them, frankly, are things that we should be proud of as a school community, and I will share with you some of those highlights in a few moments. At grades 3 through 8, again, this is last year's data, the 3 through 8 scores for English Language Arts, again, compared Guilderland, middle column is Suburban Council, far right is New York State. So doing well there. Important to note that the exams themselves changed last year to a new format, so there is really no way to connect last year's exams to previous exams. There's just no connection point between them. So we'll be following the trends as we go to the second administration of the new format this year. Hopefully we will continue to do well with that. And grades 3 through 8, mathematics, again right there with Suburban Council, and then New York State being on the far right. Science, which is only administered at grades 4 and 8. Likewise, again, I think Suburban Council schools are very similar overall. So you'll see we're doing quite well there. And again, New York State is a far right column. So Marie mentioned beyond the classroom, and again, I'll kind of reiterate what I said about test scores, which are really one measure that we use. But it's really important to think about a comprehensive and whole program for our students, which includes not just what we do within the classroom. It also includes things like our interscholastic athletic program. So in Guilderland, we have 19 interscholastic athletic offerings at grades 7 and 8. We have 65 offerings for students in grades 9 through 12. Some highlights of our athletic program: in 2017-18, we were the Scholar Athlete School of Excellence in the region. 2017-18, we were also awarded the Excellence for Sportsmanship, Ethics, and Integrity. And again, in 17-18, the Suburban Council Sportsmanship Award runner-up. All things that I know Regan Johnson is exceedingly proud of. He very often speaks about the importance of sportsmanship over victory, which is always an encouraging thing to hear. Our fine and performing arts programs, we have an extremely robust art program. Many faculty exhibit their own work with state professional art associations and the United Teachers. They present at national conferences. We have numerous students who exhibit work in local, regional, and state art shows, and many, many awards, some of which I'll highlight in just a moment. Likewise for music, very robust and award-winning program. We have over 2,000 students who regularly perform with school and community. We have many, many students who participate in the NYSSMA Solo and Ensemble festivals. Oftentimes I'll report on that in my update. Student performances in regional, state, and all Eastern and national ensembles. So just to highlight a few things that have taken place with art and music, We've had vocalists selected to the All-National Honor Choir, and they performed in Florida back in November. We had 3 students who went to All-State. We were well represented in the area All-State with 20 GHS students. We had a student who was selected for the All-Eastern Honor Choir and traveled to Pittsburgh in April. We have musical productions that are in full swing, both at the middle school and the high school, where Les Mis will be featured at the high school and Shrek at Farnsworth Middle School. Both are slated for March, so hopefully you can attend. We have groups who regularly attend the NYSSMA Major Evaluation Festivals, again, which will be held in April. And we have a music festival this spring, which will feature 500-plus vocalists performing in grades 5 through 12. And I also promised Lori Herschenhart that I would announce, and I shared a flyer with the board, on February 2nd is the Pops Goes to Potluck event. So the flyer's there, and I believe it's on our website as well. For our art department, we have students who participate in the Art in 3 Dimensions 2018 show that was held. Annoying me. We have students in the at-large Scholastic Art Awards for the region. We had 2 Gold Key Award winners, 2 Silver Award winners, 2 honorable mentions. We were featured in the 2018 Empire State Plaza exhibition, which had 100 elementary student art pieces displayed. We had students from grade 8, the 8th grade accelerated art with Mrs. Romano. They displayed at the Norman Rockwell Museums for the 4 Freedoms exhibit. Students who won first place in photo exhibits at the Media Arts Festival, which was held at Bethlehem High School, and I could go on and go on and go on. And we also have many faculty who are very active in their respective art world as well. They oftentimes present and share at exhibits hosted at local galleries and do an amazing job. So other measures of success beyond just test scores. And then, again, beyond the classroom, for extracurricular programs and clubs at the high school, we have 65 unique clubs, and I'm going to add the Civil Discourse Club that we just heard about, because I don't think that was on our list. So we have 65 at the high school, we have 41 at the middle school. The topics and the areas of focus range anywhere from academic focus to human rights to athletic activities, culture, community, governance, STEM, honor societies, yearbook, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And then, of course, we also have the drama productions and the musical productions as well. So a very rich program, I would say, in and out of the classrooms. So in recent years, and we've kind of considered this as we're thinking about shifting demographics, our ability and our commitment to serving all students is really paramount at this point in time. And I'm going to highlight a couple of things that have taken place in recent years. One being something that's out of our hands, and that is new federal legislation. So some of you may have heard this term ESSA, or ESA, depending on how you want to pronounce it, and that stands for the Every Student Succeeds Act. And in a nutshell, that is the replacement of No Child Left Behind. Quick, easy way to look at it. New York State had to submit a plan to the U.S. Department of Education, which was approved in 2017. And there are a couple of new provisions that I do want to highlight. One of the areas, I would say probably the primary area of focus under ESSA, is this idea of equity. So equity and excellence throughout our nation's schools for students of color, low-income students, English learners, students with disabilities, and those who are homeless or in foster care is a major, major point of emphasis within the new legislation. 4 major areas for us to think about: access to learning opportunities that are focused on higher order thinking skills, multiple measures of equity, resource equity, and evidence-based interventions. And then we will be we're actually already under the new measures of accountability and also for professional development, which I'll emphasize in just a moment. So I think we're ahead of the curve a little bit. Several years ago, we really put forth a significant effort to maximize the opportunity for all of our learners. And we really worked hard to improve our service delivery options with a focus on in-class interventions through co-teaching. And you just saw and heard a good example of what co-teaching can do. We've provided collaborative planning time for our high school co-teachers. We've required supports and services to be provided to the degree possible within the general education classes, not always as a pull-out model. This brought us to better compliance with IDEA, which is the Individuals with Disability in Education Act and other federal legislation, and the mandate for us to provide instruction in what's called a least restrictive environment for all of our students. There's decades of research behind this, which is really the basis behind those federal and state laws. And again, our district and policies and our practices, I think, are reflecting that commitment as well. We're already seeing, and I think I'll point that out in a couple of ways in a moment, not only academic benefits, but very much social, emotional, and behavioral benefits for all of our students as well. So this graph down along the bottom is school years, and this, or I'm sorry, yes, it's the school years. So you can see, based on what is really a standard measure of inclusion, which is both viewed at the federal level, but it's also very much viewed in the blueprint from New York State around inclusive school practices. And that threshold is when a student is present within a general education classroom for 80% of their school day or more. So the state collects data on this, and this is the most recent set of data that's available to actually, it's data over time. But you can see Guilderland being the blue. You go all the way back to 2001, 2002. For students with disabilities, we were below 20%. Now, I'll qualify that. That sounds absolutely horrible, so let me qualify that for a minute. We were under different laws at that time. We were under different state requirements at that time, and we were also under different reporting requirements at that time. So you'll see there isn't even data available for similar low-need schools or New York State up until around 2009, 2010. And that's when the state really earnestly tried to collect data and make some assessment of how New York State was doing. In all honesty, New York State was doing very poorly. So when compared to other states across the nation, our meeting that threshold of 80% of a school day within a general education classroom, New York State as a whole was not doing well. So that commitment has been there. But if you proceed into 2010-11 and beyond, you can see that Guilderland is actually leading the way, I would say. And I will say, with challenges in front of us, with hurdles to jump over, with bridges to cross, all of those things are there, but I'm very proud to say that I think we are leading the pack right now. I'm confident that we will continue to do so, but you can see that we are by far exceeding that threshold, and we are certainly doing so more so than similar school districts or in New York State. So what's the impact on our students? So let me start with attendance rates, and I'll break this down in two ways, and I'll also qualify that first too. Our attendance rates are great to begin with. That was never an issue for us. Our kids come to school, so when we're sitting at 96% or higher, you're not going to see a drastic increase in attendance rates regardless of what we do. So the way this works, the top chart is students with disabilities. The bottom chart are non-disabled students. And if you kind of follow the colors a little bit, so on the top chart for students with disabilities, if you go to the 15-16, the top green box, that cohort was at grade 8, and they had a 95.21% attendance rate. Very good. You go to 9th grade in 16-17. This was our first year when we made the shift to co-taught classes as opposed to lower tracked classes. Basically the same attendance rate. Follow that cohort to 17-18. Goes down a little bit to 93.07, and then in 18-19, if you're following the green dots here, it's back up to 95.64. Nothing overly telling there, nothing overly compelling. Similar when you go 16-17, those are the blue boxes. You can see that cohort started in 9th grade in a co-taught setting, 95.62 to 96.2, then down to 95.12. So I think we've kind of hit a ceiling effect, honestly, when it comes to attendance. I don't think we're going to see much of an impact there. Likewise, when you get to non-disabled students, really the same kind of pattern. We're just really at the high end already to begin with, so I don't think you're going to see a drastic amount of change there. This, however, is different. So behavior is one area that we're paying very close attention to with our discipline rates. So again, 15, 16, if you start there, which is the top table, and you will see this is focusing on students with disabilities. So in that top table, if you go to the first yellow box that says 3.97, this is basically 3.97 offenses per enrolled student with disabilities. Okay? That's what we collected over the course of the 15-16 school year. So that's for the students who entered grade 9 at 2015-16. Now we're going to go down a little bit here. So if you trickle down to the yellow box in the 16-17, this is the freshman class, the grade 9 students who are now in 16-17, and you'll see the number of offenses has dropped to 2.53. If you now travel down one more box into the 17-18, you'll see our 9th grade offenses drops to 1.9. So we've essentially shown a 50% reduction in the number of offenses since we've started this work back in 15-16. Now you can look at it another way too. If you want to follow it by cohort, if you start at the top table where that 3.97 is, and you want to say, okay, that was their 9th grade year, how did they do in their 10th grade year? And the key to that is to jump to that box. So that's the same cohort and their 10th grade year. So slight drop, 0.05%, and there is not an 11th grade year for them because they're in there now. So we don't have that data completed yet. Now the other measure that we're looking at is not just the number of offenses, but how many students are repeat offenders. So how many students have one or more offenses, not just one. If you go to the far right, you can see in 2015-16 at grade 9, 8.3 was the rate for students who had one or more. Again, if you follow down, you'll see it goes to 6.9, and then you'll see it goes to 4.6. So something's happening here, and by no means is this a surprise, because we knew full well going into this work, one of the benefits for students with disabilities is they now have peer role models to work with. So we're not saying, okay, all of the students with disabilities go into one location now. We're really stressing the importance of heterogeneous classes, because those heterogeneous classes provide those students with social, emotional role models. And we like to think that that's what is taking place here. Student academic achievement. So I think one of the big fears going into this work was, I don't think these kids are going to be able to handle it in a general education classroom. That was a big fear. And an understandable fear, totally get it. However, I think we went into this knowing that there was a basis of research that would show not only do students get peer role models for social emotional growth, they get peer role models for academic growth as well. They get rich conversation, they get exposure to high quality instruction, they get exposure to rigorous curriculum. So here's what we're seeing at this point in time. And these are basically course averages, these are not exam based. So if you look at the upper left chart, these are our English Regents courses at grades 9 and 10. And this is the 2016-17 cohort. So these students were freshmen in 2016-17. It's broken down by all students, students with disabilities, ENL, and then economically disadvantaged. So if you look at the all student group, you'll see in grade 9, 83.9% of them were performing well. In grade 10, 83.2 were performing. And when I say performing well, they're passing with a high level of proficiency. Students with disabilities, the second set of bars over, 75.7 in 9th grade, and then in 10th grade that went up to 77.9. ENL, 80.7 up to 81, basically status quo for that group. And then economically disadvantaged, again, a group that we really have to pay close attention to in our district, 78.8 up to 81.9. So you can kind of follow that trend through the various areas. We've got English, math, social studies, science reflected here. and I think you'll see similar patterns. So in a nutshell, the feared cliff didn't emerge. So we didn't have high numbers of students now failing all of a sudden. In fact, we're seeing some incremental gains for the couple of years that we've really been stressing the inclusive practices. This is the 17-18 cohort, so you don't have a second bar for this cohort because this year is the second bar, basically. So once we get through 18-19, we'll have a second bar to but you can kind of get a sense of where those students came in and where they're performing as a 17-18 cohort. This, to me, is probably the most important slide in this presentation, and I'll explain why. If you look back to past years, and this could go well before 15-16, one of the historical trends, I would say, that we saw over the years was students with disabilities rarely pursued a higher level course once they met the graduation requirements. So in other words, once they got 2 years of math under their belt, very rarely did a student pursue a third year of math in the form of an Algebra 2 or trig course. So again, we started this work really with the 16-17 cohort. What you see as a bar in 16-17 is not reflecting that cohort. It's reflecting basically the junior class of 16-17. Where you see the bars for 18-19 and the projected for 19-20, that's the 16-17 cohort. So we have basically doubled the number of students with disabilities who are now choosing to participate in an upper level mathematics course. That is huge. So these are students who now have an opportunity to earn a Regents Diploma with distinction, whereas they wouldn't have had that opportunity in past years. They are pursuing and feeling confident in an upper level mathematics course. That was not something that we historically saw over the years. By doing so, they're also, again, getting a greater level of exposure to upper level courses that would help them to transition better into college and career. So I share this with you because I think this is one of the most important takeaways for that work, is students are not giving up. They're not stopping once they've met a requirement, but they're actually pursuing things beyond those basic requirements. So I'm going to shift now. I would say the second major initiative that we've undertaken in the past couple of years is known as the Engaged Learning Initiative. This is also known as our one-to-one program. Basically, every student at grades 5 through 12 was provided with a Chromebook, a device that they could use both in school, in every classroom setting, but also they could take it home and they could utilize that device at home as well. Sticking with the theme of equity, one of our goals was to ensure that every student had access to like resources, that there were no students because of hardship or economic disadvantage were not able to do that, and I think we've been able to accomplish that. But then also equity across classes was a secondary goal. So in the past, we had devices that were available, but they were not available in every classroom. They were available in select classrooms, so there had to be, a lot of sharing that took place. We had carts that were scattered throughout the buildings, but certainly students could go from one class, have access to the technology resources, and then go to the next class, nothing. So that was a problem. This was almost entirely funded by the Smart Schools Bond Act, so we're very fortunate and thankful for that. But we've been able to now provide essentially ubiquitous technology in our middle school and our high school, and then to a greater extent at our elementaries as well, where students could access those devices at any point in time in their learning. So just to give you a little bit of a sense of usage, Pear Deck is one application that our teachers use often. We've been monitoring that throughout the course of this year, and thus far we've had 44,425 engagements with the student Chromebooks. It's a good number. Chromebook classroom usage, and I'll just highlight January 14th, one day. We had it's the week of January 14th. We had 3,179 highly active students. So of the essentially 6 through 12 student body, basically all of them were active with their devices. We had 382 weekly active teachers. We have roughly 400 teachers, so just about all of our teachers are becoming active. You look at documents that have been added or created. We're able to monitor that usage via Google Docs. During that same week, we had 3,802 new documents created. Files edited or revised or updated, so how often are students going in and doing work and hopefully improving their work? 7,574 files updated during that week. So they're being used. I can tell you that they're being used. I will openly admit at the start of the year, which was no surprise to me, there were some bumps in performance. Anytime you introduce 3,000 new devices into a wireless setting, there are inevitably going to be some bumps in performance, but I think we've resolved them, and I think we're moving forward very nicely. I would be remiss if I did not thank our technicians and our technology leaders in the district, as well as our student help desks. They worked tirelessly. They gave up a huge number of hours to come in, get devices configured, ready for deployment on the first day of school, even with the delivery of devices coming literally 4 days before the start of school. So they deserve a huge amount of thanks. Let me circle back to the professional learning that I mentioned under the era of ESSA. And again, that's the Every Student Succeeds Act. One of the shifts in that language, that legislation, is how professional development is defined under that law. And that sounds nice, but there are some really important pieces that we have to understand about that. Federal dollars are linked to that now. So if our professional development plans and programs do not align with those definitions of professional development, we will not be approved for federal dollars, which primarily comes in the form of Title II, which has been around for years and years, but it now has conditions for us to be able to access that money. And we typically get about $100,000 a year for the purpose of teacher and leader professional development. So a couple of other highlights under ESSA. or No Child Left Behind, formally really focused on what they call core academic subjects: science, math, social studies, language arts. This new legislation, and I'm very thankful for this, expands where we can use those funds to include teachers of every subject and all other school staff, from principals to librarians to paraprofessionals. So I think that's a step forward in the legislation. It recognizes and it really emphasizes that educators learn best when they can collaborate and immediately apply what they learn. So the idea of kind of the one-shot workshop days is really not approved any longer under ESSA. It requires professional development that is sustained, it's intensive, it's collaborative, it's job embedded, it's data informed, and it's classroom focused. So we've already taken some steps that I think align very well with this. The work that we're doing around instructional coaching, for example, that is a prime example of an embedded professional development structure. ESSA also supports new programs that are designed to build and reward leadership capacity of teachers. So I'll forewarn the board, you're going to hear from me some proposals around teacher leader positions being reinstated and new ones being created going forward, largely because of this, because that is what we really need to be able to align with the professional development requirements under ESSA. So how do we make the most of the specifications pertaining to professional development? Digital integration is going to be critical, making sure that we can really sustain the outcomes, so the collaborative tools that we have at our disposal will be important. Encouraging multi-channel engagement with intensive curricula. Designing collaborative teacher-led training environments where teacher leadership, and again I noted here new teacher leadership opportunities will be proposed by me, so be warned. Instructional coaching, which is well underway at this point in time. And again, really prioritizing the job-embedded focus and utilizing data to the extent that we possibly can. And down on the bottom that's cut off, it just says remaining classroom focused. So we were reflecting on the board's response to the budget survey, which was administered, I guess back in December, I think we did that. And one of the things that came out of that budget survey was the importance of offering new electives to our high school students. So we just wanted to share with you, this is what's been introduced since 2014-15. So art, technology education, math, English, science, social studies, business, music, world languages and cultures, and then EMC squared, which I think first year that was 14. So we've offered many new electives, and the tricky thing about new electives is when you offer new electives and students opt for those, they're no longer enrolled in old electives. So there is kind of a push and pull when you do that. But we've been very active over the years to introduce new electives to our high school students. We're actively investigating school start times. As you know, there's a district-wide task force that has been created to undertake this work with multiple stakeholders represented, so that's ongoing. We're hoping for some recommendations in the fall of 2019. We have a new solar farm that we've created. I'll give the credit to Cliff Nooney. So we have a 2-megawatt solar farm that's located in Altamont, and certainly this is for energy efficiencies, as well as a focus on renewable energy resources, reduction of carbon emissions, but also an accessible instructional tool for us, from collection of data, analysis of data, etc. And I think we made it without the computer shutting down. So, we're off to our next step.
We're going to see if anybody has questions.
Any questions? Barbara?
A few years back, we talked about a finance course at the high school, which I thought was a new elective, and I didn't see that here. And since then, a number of states have actually made proposals, and some have actually passed them, that they require each child to have a personal finance course.
I think we introduced that before 14-15.
Oh, okay.
So it's there, it's up and running.
And do we have great participation in that, or just?
It's good participation. Yeah, I mean, it's, it oftentimes boils down to who has time in their schedule to fit it in. And it's also an elective, so, again, if a student's choosing another elective over that, that's their choice. But availability within schedule is certainly critical for that. And it's been a steady participation rate. I don't know, Mike, if you have any numbers handy. I don't have numbers in front of me, but it's been steady over the years. There's been no reason to think about it not running. It's been up and running, and kids are taking the course.
Seema?
The two slides you had on academic achievement and discipline rates, I think it was like students with disabilities. So I'm just trying to understand, are you attributing, I guess, those big changes because of the inclusive practices, or do you think there are some other changes, I guess?
What's the variable that's changed, I guess, would be the question that I'd ask. And I think the variable that has changed is the students that we are looking at, with students with disabilities, they are now in heterogeneous grouped classes, with co-teacher support within the classes. So personally, yes, I would conclude that that's definitely a product of the work that we've done with that shift to co-taught classes and the shift to have students grouped better in a heterogeneous setting. So that would be my conclusion for sure.
You have, that's high school, right? That
Yes.
we have, okay. I didn't know if you had anything for like elementary, middle, or if that was not no change.
Elementary, first off, we're fortunate that we have very low discipline rates at the elementary to begin with. So there's not a lot of data there. Honestly, when we collect the Vader report data and the DASA report data, we're usually looking at
high school
single digits, 5 incidences maybe that are reportable. Middle school, I know middle school is really looking at some shifts. I think you heard some of the shifts that were being planned at the middle school. They haven't pursued in the same degree as what we've done at the high school, co-taught settings, but I know they're very, very much eager to get moving on that. So they're looking at some different special ed configurations to have better access, potentially some additional staff. I'll give you that information as well. But the primary focus for us for the first couple of years of this work has been really the high school and the shifts that we've made there.
Thank you.
Teresa?
I just had a question regarding that same thing, Seema, the student impact behavior discipline chart that you have. And maybe I'm misreading it, but my understanding is in the 2015-16, you have 3.97 offenses to enrolled. And then I would look at the next section of the 2016-17 for the grade 10, right? So it went from 397 that one year to 392 the second of the same group.
If you're following the same.
If you're following that same group of kids. And the same would go for, in 2016, the grade 9, going down to grade 10 in 2017, 2018.
Say that again?
So just following the same measure, the 20, in 2016, 17, the grade 9 there would be the grade 10, the following section.
Yep.
I'm just not, I see it as valuable, I just don't see it as dramatic. Because you're going from 397 to 392, and then 253, I guess, down to 146.
So
Am I just not reading the numbers as quantitative?
to be clear, when it says enrolled, that's per enrolled student classified with disabilities. So the number of students that we have, for example, in 15-16, if you look at the number of enrolled, it's 65 students.
Yep.
So if you imagine 3.97 incidents or offenses on average by those 65 students. So you're talking about 180 offenses roughly,
Okay,
okay? Bounce down and go all the way down to 17-18, you're at 1.9 offenses per enrolled student. Let's cut it in half.
but not the
Not that
same
cohort.
group.
Not the same group, but you could even follow the same group if you want.
That's what I mean, if you're following the same group, I don't see it as dramatic.
So go
And-
253 and 16-17 down to 1.46.
Okay.
Okay.
I mean, I do see that, I just, when you're dealing with the same group of kids, I can kind of, I can see it when you're dealing with the same group of kids in that, okay, there's less offenses the following year, they're getting more acclimated, things are kind of becoming more routine. But when you're dealing with a separate group of kids, I don't really see the,
So look at the raw number of offenses, okay? And let's go to 16-17, the offenses column.
Yep.
Grade 9, you had 167,
mhm,
okay? Go to grade 10.
it went down to 83. Yep.
I can tell you from an assistant principal world, reducing 84 incidents and offenses is huge. It's huge.
Okay, I see that.
Questions?
Gloria? How much of this is shared with the staff?
We've just been collecting it recently, so
Right.
tonight's kind of the first presentation of this.
Right. What do you
It's
think?
certainly accessible, Mike, you can share away at staff meetings and have conversations, but this is the
Well, I
most
think,
recent data.
I think especially, we've been making some changes and staff may have not been so gung-ho on some of them. And then you've got data now that supports some of those changes. I think it would be very important to have some conversation as to what they've done and how it's resulted.
Yep.
I think that's crucial.
I agree.
Tomorrow, the district office team and the GTA leadership from all of our buildings, secondary buildings, are going to meet at Farnsworth, and then one of the topics is how are we measuring how the work around co-teaching and inclusion has gone. So I think that opens the door to have this broader conversation.
Other questions?
Just a
Judy?
comment, I think it's really good. I'm really happy to see this, to get some results, because it was a long struggle, or a difficult struggle to get through the beginning of it, and it's made a difference, and that just...
Thank you. I do want to say, though, it's not without continuing challenges. And that's really important to know. So the one slide that I said was the most important slide, for example, where we now have more students, almost twice as many students participating in Algebra 2 courses. That's a new thing for us. That's a new phenomenon where we didn't really look at that as a top priority because students just weren't getting there. Now they're getting there, so now the question is, okay, how do we support them once they're there? And I think these questions are going to come up continuously for a long time, if not forever, where we have to really be problem-solving, collaborating, working together. I think that's really where the benefit comes when you have a co-taught setting. You saw Jamie DeStefano and Chris Missoura tonight, and The two of them, I can tell you, they didn't always see eye to eye, but what they were committed to was solving problems as they arose. And problems that were not just focused on students with disabilities, but problems that were present for any student.
In the real world, that's what you're going to meet up with, is students or people from all over.
So it's not all rainbows and unicorns. There's hard work that goes into this, and there's a lot of conversation and collaboration that happens.
Well, what a difference it's making for our kids.
I think so. I mean, it's early still, but I do think we're definitely moving in the right
And
direction.
probably also for the teachers. I think there's got to be a lot of,
I don't think we have many co-taught classes that would want to go backwards at this point in time. I think there's, it takes a couple of years to really build that co-teaching partnership. And, now that many of those partners have that time under their belt, they're really starting to get into the routine and the flow of things and really understanding the strengths and weaknesses of each other and how they support each other.
I just have to share one little story. I happened to be on a tenure visit for one of our PE teachers last week, and the class that I visited was a co-taught PE class, but a unified co-taught PE class. So half the children in the classroom, in the gym, had multiple significant disabilities, and the other half had none, and they were doing a dance unit. And if you wanted to see kids helping kids and having a great time and learning together, it was just priceless. I probably should have put some pictures in our, because that's the kind of data that you can't quite capture in reports we put together for the state. And we give that same kind of feeling around our Unified Sports program, where our students with disabilities who never would have worn a Guilderland uniform and been cheered on by a crowd regularly are now. And that's the kind of the hearts and minds work that I think has been so transformative in many ways. Not without, struggle and all of the good things, but anything that's worthwhile is difficult by definition, I think. So I'll just share that. Any other questions for us? All right, if not, we're going to do something a little bit different with you tonight. We are launching tonight something called Thought Exchange. And for everyone in the room here, this is a new tool to Guilderland Central School District that gives us a new way to engage our entire school community around important topics. So we did a trial run of these exchanges with our leadership team last week. And in 8 minutes, where we opened this platform, we asked 25 people to respond to one question. And in 8 minutes, we had 609 individual thoughts shared about the particular topic. So the basis of this platform is to get input from everybody anonymously, and to give you the opportunity to weigh in on the input of your peers. So we are officially launching something right now called a Thought Exchange, and what you will need in order to participate is your phone, and you're going to want to go to your browser and enter in thoughtexchange.com/join, and you'll be prompted to put in these 9 digits. When you get there, there'll be a little introduction of a few sentences, and there'll be a video clip of yours truly, which I beg you not to watch right now. That is for all the people who will be doing this after this kind of soft launch with all of us here together. Once you get there, you will have a couple demographic questions to answer. There's only 2 of them. And once you do that, you will be prompted to respond to this question. What do you value most about GCSD, Guilderland Central School District? And what can we do better to prepare our students for the future? So we're going to let you work on getting logged in. If anyone is having a hard time for whatever reason, raise your hand. We've got Aubrey here, and we can also help. And then shortly, I will stop talking. And what I'll simply ask you to do is spend some time adding your thoughts to those two questions, which will be there. What do you value about Guilderland? What can we do better? In about 5 minutes, I'm going to ask you to start rating the ideas of the people in this room that you will see on a scale of 1 to 5. If you strongly agree with something, you give it 5 stars. If you don't agree, you give it 1, or something in between. We're going to ask that everyone contribute 4 or 5 thoughts and rate 20 or 30. And we should be able to do that in about 10 minutes, and we'll give you a little snapshot of what this room thinks about these topics. Is everybody in? We have a highly able group of people here today.
It's okay.
All right. So
We'll see what you're doing. I've done it before, so.
okay.
We don't put the dash.
I don't know, I put them in.
Oh, okay. Oh, okay. We just continue logging in.
Yeah.
There's Marie.
Participate, hit participate.
What is it? What do we value about our district? We can say as many as we can. Staff commitment. I was going to say leaders.
What else? What are we waiting for?
Because it's a person that supports and it innovates. Committee members. I'm a committee member. We're like multiple roles. We're like taxpayers.
Fast fingers.
Yeah, she's good. Gotta see other people, and then you get to rate them, okay? When did you do this? I did a thing, I went into one, and I got to, that's right, to do it. I remember you talking about. Okay, well, I was thought that someone else shared a valuable will to takers and try new ideas about students and innovators. I like that. Yeah. I like your thought. Many choices for students. Students are challenged. I think that's important. Teachers, they don't say why. Okay. Forward-thinking district school says that education. I think they should. That's us. It's our idea. Yeah. Yeah. School enthusiasm, eagerness to learn, they're wonderful people, right? Value most, yes, I value that. Yeah. Value the collaboration between the stakeholders and their value that, yeah. These are all good. Yeah. There's always working to improve that. Yeah. We're all saying about the same thing, you know. I look at the quiz here too. Yeah, well, yeah, that's true. Options for programs, they value those.
See as people enter their thoughts, but then
Staff and
also
leadership.
they
Always trying to improve them.
And then it will
That's
also
us.
start to bring the top
Involved in supportive
thoughts
families.
that receive the highest ratings to the top.
Involved in supportive families.
Informed decisions that we may make,
Educational
or plans
enrichment
that we may make,
opportunities.
get a better sense from all of our
Commitment to excellent
contributors to this work,
instructions.
what's really
Teachers
the
continue to
priorities for
strive.
our community, for our teachers, for our
We need to continue learning. It's amazing what we, innovation. Yeah. Value movement toward increasing instructional intensity classes and provides opportunities. Data was great. Yeah. Connecting practices to PT. Child, yes, these are things I value. Better use a trauma-informed approach.
One of the
Students
key things here is, you'll see it says under them, not
focusing on mental wellness will provide
ratings
positive
yet,
learning.
will
Yeah,
not
that's true.
start to sort itself until we have
We can
5
involve
or more
teachers more in
ratings
the
per
PD
block.
plan. Join us for collaboration.
Yeah.
Opportunities for staff to grow professionally, that's for sure. Availability of extracurriculars and advanced courses. Gilliland is, didn't like, Gilliland is forward thinking. Yeah, we're not going to disagree with these people. Knowledge need to improve how diversity is addressed and is so important. Populations changing, that's very good. Involvement and participation. Vision and commitment of a school community to be change makers, educating learners, changing.
Can you see all the thoughts?
The teachers.
I can't see them yet.
Seeing potential in students and to see it in themselves. Young children need that. Value of robust arts and music.
There's only 2 questions, right?
Taking
questions?
Students, teachers taking risks and can innovate.
Maybe I wasn't supposed to do that one. Oh, maybe you're right. I'm gonna rate it.
Different experiences.
That's what I was thinking through.
High value the quality of teachers. Colleges, opportunity. True. And we got this. These are repeats. Technology.
I'm rating right now.
Today. All right, we can go to, let's go to Discover. This is where you can check out the results. Just remember top thoughts. Averaging rating, topic show trending.
This could get.
Top thoughts. Value the quality of teachers that work in the districts. Human in depth. That was the top one. Collaboration. That was another top one.
Yeah.
Patient staff. Passion and commitment. Those are
I would ask the question.
city.
I don't think we approve it tonight. I think it's just information.
That's good. District.
Please.
That's a set.
Oh, it tells
that-
you like
how
how
many
many-
people how many people gave it a 4, how many people gave it a 5.
Okay.
Now we're getting down a little bit, so this is a little less. Those were the top
Yeah,
ones.
yeah.
The teaching staff, forward thinking, risk taking. Next one. These are all pretty high. Take risks. These are similar.
How about one more minute, folks, and then we'll take a quick look at some results,
Inclusive environment
talk about what our next steps
and
are.
leadership. I think with more diverse group, it would be interesting.
Yeah.
It would be really interesting to see.
Just like what other people were saying.
Yeah. We can go back to the exchange again. So there's another, she didn't ask the second question. 14. Oh, I thought she was going to do 2.
I thought 14.
It was going to be value most, and then what do you want to... Topics. Do better, more reps. Oh, you see, we can do the do better. Most, we can do the do better one. second question. How'd you get to the second question?
All right. I know you're all deeply engrossed, but I also know we have more things we have to look at tonight. So if I can just ask you to look up at the screen, you can get a little bit of a flavor for what some of the top thoughts are for the people in this room. Well, I won't read them aloud to you, but there's a lot about our quality people who do great work on behalf of the students and people who go above and beyond. So we can get a nice feel for kind of what is on individuals' minds. This will go on. We're going to have this exchange open for the next 2 weeks.
With these questions?
Same 2 questions. So I'm sure tonight we focused, seemed like in the first part of the question, but something tells me we'll get into the other part of the question too. So our plan tomorrow is to reach out through all of our typical channels so that individuals can, we'll just have the link to click on that will take them to the exchange. Facebook, Twitter, website, SNN. We have a letter to the editor going to the Enterprise with a QR code so that people who are in the community can access it without getting to our website if they want to. We're going to ask students to participate. And you can go in as many times as you want. You have new ideas you want to put in, or if you want to go and see what else some of your community members have said, if you want to rate more thoughts, you can absolutely do that. You may have noticed when you logged or you joined tonight that you could have logged in or not. You do not have to log in. If you do, you'll simply get reminders that say, hey, there's some new thoughts if you want to star them. So this will be open 2 weeks. That is through February 5th at 11 o'clock at night. We're hoping to get literally thousands of individuals weighing in. And honestly, this is just the very first thought exchange that we'll do. We took a real broad question to help people get comfortable with it. But we think there are many, many topics and questions that will come up over time that we can reach out to all of you to get feedback. So I want to thank you very much for participating, and I want you to tell your friends to log in, or not log in, to join and participate. And then we will think about how this data can be disaggregated and demonstrated a million different ways. And we will come up with a nice way to share that with all of you. The last thing I want to say, and why I think this is such a cool tool, often we will survey you, and you'll complete our surveys, and the analysis is done by the district. This analysis is done by you. And so the most important thoughts are not our most important thoughts, they are your most important thoughts. So we're really excited about this opportunity and where it might lead, and we're really looking forward to learning from you in this very first thought exchange. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, the next item on our agenda is our approval of the consent agenda, which consists of the minutes of the January 8th, 2019 meeting, the CPSC and CSE recommendations, personnel action items, and the financial reports. May I have a motion to approve the consent agenda? Barbara, second Seema. Are there any questions or comments on any of these items? Okay, all those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Passes. And now we move down to information items, school business information. Neil?
We have 2 items this evening. I have to log back in. 1 second. Peter went to sleep on me. First, I'd like to start with an update on state aid. As you all know, the governor released his executive budget proposal on last Tuesday, a week ago. His proposal for funding public schools and other educational programs and initiatives resulted in a $956 million increase over the current year, which is a 3.6% increase. Foundation aid, which is that basic aid that follows every student, is slated to increase by $338 million, or 1.9%. Reimbursement for expense-based aids, such as transportation or BOCES, increased by $400 million, and then other educational programs and initiatives by $207 million. Under the proposal, each public school district throughout the state is guaranteed at least a 0.25% increase to their foundation aid amount next year. In the aid runs released by the state, under the governor's proposed budget, Guilderland would receive the minimum 0.25% increase in foundation aid, which totals year-to-year difference is an additional $37,451.
Are there any questions or comments on that?
Next item is an update on the fiscal stress monitoring system status. And each year, the New York State Office of the State Comptroller releases its annual report measuring the amount of fiscal stress schools are operating under based on data from the, in this case, from the 2017-18 school year. The Comptroller's Office created a tool that looks at various financial and environmental factors, and using a weighted scoring system converts those weighted scores into one of four designations. That would be either significant fiscal stress, moderate fiscal stress, susceptible to fiscal stress, or no designation. For the fourth year in a row, I'm pleased to report that Guilderland received no designation, indicating that the financial indicators reviewed were not indicative of potential fiscal stress.
That's good news. Are there any questions or comments for Neil? Sure, Teresa.
What were we designated as 5 years ago?
Susceptible to fiscal stress is the lowest level of fiscal stress.
That would really, and was that really driven by expenditure of fund balance, or was
There's really fund balance, reserves, cash on hand, those types of things. So we've taken steps over the years, and that was kind of in the middle of the financial crisis as well. We drew down, as I showed you in previous presentations. We did use more of our fund balance and reserves. We were doing some short-term borrowings as well, which also is a negative factor in their calculation. Since that time, we've been able to replenish some of our fund balance and reserves and move into a better spot. But it's really about having cash available on hand. That's a big criteria.
Any other questions or comments for Neil? Okay. Thank you, Neil. Now we move to superintendent information items. Marie?
Thank you. I just have one item tonight. This is a draft of the 2019-2020 calendar, and this has been distributed to our stakeholder group, parents, teachers, support staff, our leadership team, and it is based on the calendar that the Capital Region BOCES adopted about a month ago, and they build their calendar in collaboration with 3 other neighboring BOCES so that our major vacation periods line up, because we have students who cross over BOCES lines. So you have a calendar before you tonight that is probably the most straightforward we've had in a while. Probably the most distinguishing feature of it that everyone has been commenting on is the 2-week break around the holidays in December, January, because of the Wednesday holidays. But we really haven't had any conflicts, any questions. It seems quite straightforward. So interested in any feedback from the board, and hopefully we can bring this back for action at the February 11th board meeting. We are getting calls. People want to know what the calendar for next year looks like, so we want to try to wrap this up as quickly as we can. But I'm happy to take questions.
Questions? Okay.
Okay.
Thank you. And now we move to board president information items. There's one this evening, which is a variety of policies presented this evening for a first read. Barbara, would you like to comment on any of them?
No, there's really nothing new here. It's just updating current policies.
Okay.
So that we don't have them 10 years and we haven't looked at them.
Great. Okay. So take a look at those in between now and the next meeting. And now we move on to action items, school business management. Back to Neil.
Okay. We just have one item this evening, and this is a resolution to approve an agreement to join together to operate a combined ice hockey team for students from Scotia Glenville, Mahonison, Shalmont, Voorheesville, in addition to our own school districts as well for the 2018 school year.
Okay, may I have a motion to approve the agreement? Barbara, second Teresa. Are there any questions or comments on this one? Okay, all those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Passes 9-0. And now we move on to board committee reports. Audit?
There isn't anything to report. We don't have a meeting scheduled as of yet.
Okay. Business practices?
Yes, we met last week on January 16th. First item on the agenda, well, the only really item on the agenda was for us to hear from Cliff Nooney about the capital construction project and his take on things and his recommendations. We spent a lot of time on that. We're looking at a potential proposition be placed on May 21st on the ballot for voter approval, and that'll be the same date as the budget vote. We're looking at an overall project cost being reduced from the original $42.7 million presented to the voters in October to $30.6 million, a reduction of $12.1 million, which would be a corresponding reduction in the estimated median homeowner tax input from $103 to $65 per year. So the committee heard the recommendations. We focused on cost adjustments that were made to some newer information that had come in, and also we looked at projects that would be deferred because of time. So we're not going to go into specifics tonight. The full board will be getting a report on February 11th. I believe Neil and Cliff will be presenting that to us. And then, so we'll get information that night. We'll also get information March 12th, and that'll be an opportunity, because we'll have plenty of time to look it over ourselves, ask questions, to understand it better, make any additional recommendations, and then we would take action on March 19th as a board. So that gives us plenty of time. And the public should feel free to come to any board meeting at the beginning or the end of the meeting to give input regarding what you hear on February 11th.
Great.
And that was, yeah, we don't have another meeting scheduled right now.
Okay, thank you. Communications?
I was absent at the last meeting, so I'd like to thank Gloria for filling in there. I can cover the one-over summary from the minutes unless I'll ask you to do that.
Okay, I can do that. Our first item on the agenda was the community input for the budget and the capital vote. We wanted to get as much information from the committee as to how we could proceed to get information out to the public before the May vote. We talked about putting together talking points for the PTA and the GTA. We also are going to ask again, Marie and Damien and Neil, I think, all went to the McCowanville Neighborhood Association to talk, to ask for outreach to the Gilliland Chamber of Commerce, do press releases, letters to the editor, letters to the Altamont Enterprise, and letter to the editor, outreach to students who are eligible to vote, budget and capital newsletter. We're going to talk about how the newsletter would be presented so that the community is fully aware on the budget, but the capital project, the bus proposition, and all that, and make sure that everybody feels comfortable with the information. And looking at every other mechanism that we can use, SNNs and every other way that we can get information out. We also, the second item was, we talked a bit about our BOCES communication specialist and the amount of work that job has taken on, and looking at comparisons with other districts and the amount of hours that we have versus what other districts are able to accomplish and needing more hours for that. So we've asked Aubrey and Marie to come back to us with an idea on if we increase the number of hours from BOCES for our communication specialists, what would it enable us to do that we can't do now? So how would that impact us? So we asked them to come back to us at the next meeting. So we will be coming forward eventually with some recommendation regarding whether or not we need to increase that time that we have. And we will be meeting next on, February 5th at 8 o'clock at the district office. We have 3 items so far on the agenda: the BOCES services for the communication specialist, the thought exchange debrief. At that point, we should have some information on how that went, and a continuing discussion on the capital project and the budget vote and how to proceed with that.
Great, thank you, Gloria.
Thank you,
Sean. Policy Committee?
We're meeting again February 7th at 5:30.
Great. Public comment number 2. Linda, has anybody signed up? Okay. And now we move to board issues, ideas, and sharing. Does anybody have anything this evening? Ben?
I'd just like to remind everyone that Thursday night at the Gittleman Public Library is a Eagles MC Squared event where the kids will be presenting their stuff to judges. I know at least 2 of our board members have signed up for that, which is great. And
What time is that then?
Could be there at 3:30.
the public viewing will be from 5 to 6.
We're gonna be there earlier.
And this is just one of the programs that's really unique to Gittleland. So it's great that they were invited to speak to the Regents last week, but that didn't work out at all. So it's really great to go and see them and the cool stuff that they're doing.
Are they gonna reschedule that? You know?
Well, I've asked about that. I hope so. I did invite Joan Ebert, who's the deputy commissioner, to the 24th event, but she and her team are in Rochester for something else that night. Or I think we would have had a couple, so I'll continue to reach out.
Anyone else? Sean?
I just want to say what a great job the middle school Future Cities team did. I got a chance to check out their models, and I was quite impressed with some of the others that are out there. I think there's a couple of ringers in the game, got to be honest. But again, I'll admit my bias, so congratulations.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, then we need a motion to adjourn the meeting. Barbara, second Teresa. All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
That was Tim.
And don't forget to fill out your surveys.
Oh, I forgot. Oh, don't forget, I didn't mention this. You did get new pages for your binder. We changed those. Remember the email thing? Please put them in your binder, your handbook.